Listen to the line in Three Amigos where they say, "Do you guys have anything but Mexican food?" These are
Five,
all of my
four.
favorite jokes. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Two Way Tonight. Stock market's boomed today. Oil went up a little bit. Brent crude is up to at 25. Gas is still under $4, but it could go higher. All on news that the inflation rate was quite down compared to what people expected, lowest in a while. Big stories for us: Iran and Maine, and we'll talk about both those. There's some other little things, but we're going to talk a lot about Iran and Maine. And well, those are the big things we're going to talk about. We're also at 6 o'clock Eastern tonight, going to have a new poll from Harris X. Mark Penn will be here to present it, and it's part of our Capital Intel series, and I recommend you stay for that. Mark Penn has been presenting polls like this, national polls, big, robust national polls, huge sample size, to CEOs of Fortune 10 companies and heads of state and heads of government for many years. And it's my privilege and yours, really, to have an opportunity to sit through the polling presentation and then ask questions. So that'll be at the top of the hour after our regular episode of this program. Two great guests here tonight. Will be with us in a moment. Tim Rice, Washington Bureau Chief of the Daily Wire, and Jim Kessler, the Third Way. And you'll get a chance to ask them questions too here on the program. Please raise your hand if you're here on the platform, would like to get in on the conversation. If you're interested in the World Cup and you recorded the match for some reason, really these are meant to be enjoyed live, ladies and gentlemen. France loses Spain 2-0. Spain was extraordinary. Anyway, so we'll do all that, and welcome, as I said, everybody's participation. So if you're here on the platform, raise your hand. If you're watching on X or YouTube, please no smack in the chat. Let me just do our sponsor, and then we'll bring our guests in and we'll get going. Cozy Earth makes extraordinary things. Some of you have purchased them and send me long handwritten notes about how much you like them. And others of you just tune me out. But don't tune me out, ladies and gentlemen, because Cozy Earth makes great stuff, and now it's available to you at 20% off using the promo code TWOWAY. Just go to cozyearth.com and look around a bit. Think about what you need. You need some new socks, some new bedding, new towels, whatever you need. Order them. Use the promo code, and you'll see why so many members of our community find Cozy Earth stuff to just be one of a kind. One of the best parts of your day will be interacting with your Cozy Earth stuff. Viscose from bamboo, extremely comfortable. Nothing about it's flimsy. It's all extremely well made. The bedding comes with a 10-year warranty and a 100-night return policy. So try it for 100 nights. If you don't like the sheets, you send them back. It's that simple. They make returns easy. Everything from Cozy Earth is breathable, soft, and now built for summer. Go to cozyearth.com, use the promo code TWOWAY, get 20% off. And if you see the post-purchase survey, please tell them you heard about Cozy Earth right here on Two Way Tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Kessler's here. Jim Kessler works the Third Way, and he's a returning Jeopardy champion and fan favorite both. Jim, thank you for being here.
Pleasure.
We'll bring Tim in, but while I do you want to start with Iran or Maine?
Let's start with Maine.
Maine. Tim Rice is here, ladies and gentlemen. Call him a bureau chief for the Daily Wire. Tim, which would you like to start with? Hopefully you'll say Maine.
I was going to say Maine,
Yeah,
not to start on a disagreeable note, but
as goes Maine. I will say regarding Maine, or Iran rather, people besieged me with questions yesterday. How's the president going to get all this money, and what's the bureaucracy, and what other countries think, blah, blah, blah. And then some members of his administration pointed out to him what a crap idea it was. So he did away with it. But I refused to answer the questions yesterday. How's it going to work? Because I knew he was going to either do one of two things. This is how we start with Maine, by the way. I get it raw off my chest. He's either going to pretend he never said it, and in a few 2 or 3 days when somebody asked him about it, a reporter asked him, he was going to say, "Oh, I never said that," or he was going to just today say, "I got a better idea," and that's what he did today. And so I got a lot of questions yesterday about how it's going to work. I got a lot of questions today. Were you surprised at how quickly the president backed off? No, I was not surprised. I would say, is this the dumbest idea the president's had, the most unworkable idea he's had as president? No, there have been ones that are more unworkable. But this was right up there, ladies and gentlemen. It was never going to happen. All right, let's talk about Maine. Lots going on with Maine. First of all, Jim Kessler's group, The Third Way, put out a great memo talking about the necessity, once again, the party better stop nominating socialists and coddling socialists. Jim Kessler, is there somebody running to replace Graham Plattner who's acceptable to Third Way? In other words, is there a moderate in this field, or are they all just competing to be as left-wing as they can?
So anybody who wins this nomination of the 4 or 5 who've thrown their hats in the ring is better than Graham Plattner. Like it's puts us like this was an unwinnable situation, not just because of Graham Plattner's policy positions, which would turn off the centrists in Maine, but because of all the other personal baggage that he brought to the table, and that more was definitely coming out. So having said that, I think I am at this point lean pessimistic for Democrats on Maine, even though of all the pickups, it is the bluest of the states. It's bluer than Minnesota. It is bluer than New Jersey, at least in terms of presidential vote. But this is like having whoever wins, it's like having a nominee, an athlete who tore an Achilles tendon is coming back, quick rehab. Like this is an electorate that's in an ornery mood, in a bad state, and facing an incumbent, Susan Collins, who I think in some ways is overrated. Being 72 years old, this is not the year to be 72. This is not the year to be a Republican in a blue state. This is not the year to be in Congress for half a century. But she knows that state. She works that state hard. So I think this is going to be a tough get for Democrats when, in fact, 6 months earlier, it was our easiest state to win.
Jim, don't take this the wrong way. I was so interested in everything you said. I think it was all really smart, but you did not answer my question. As you look at this field of 5, they all seem to me to be competing to be as left-wing as possible. Like some of them are for abolishing ICE, and some of them are taking a good, long, hard look at ICE. Just to cite one issue, do you see in the group, is there somebody more moderate, more centrist, more center-left as opposed to far-left, or not? I don't see it, but I'm wondering if you do.
Yeah, so I think that Rob Shaw is probably the one that is the most centrist of these. However, the nominating process that we have now in Maine, and I want to give the Maine Democratic Party like all the credit in the world. They are doing the best they can and being really transparent. But this is not going to be decided by the voters. It's going to be decided by a more activist class, and they're far to the left for the most part in Maine, as they are in most places. So I think they're all trying to appeal to a very small number. It's like winning a caucus in Iowa versus winning a primary in South Carolina. It's a different universe of voters.
Tim, I kid because I love. I thought Jim might say Shaw. I really did, because Jim has to say something. And Shaw, in some ways, is the least left wing. But man, here he is today. I haven't even seen this one, but I can tell you that this guy would be kicked out of the Third Way cafeteria for just this video alone, without even having seen it. 113, please.
There's a saying in science and in healthcare: what's predictable is preventable. And when you give an agency tens of billions of dollars without rules, without transparency, with zero consequences, yesterday's tragedy is exactly what you get. Senator Collins has funded the abuses, she has confirmed the leaders, and she has refused to make them answer for anything and failed to impose safeguards.
All right, I was wrong. I thought that was an ad, not a thing. Anyway, that was fine, of course.
That was fine.
The guy's pretty left wing.
Absolutely fine.
It is. I was wrong about it. Anyway, today the ICE said no. In most circumstances, they're not stopping cars anymore. I would have told them to do that after Minnesota. Again, unless you're sure the person in the car is about to kill somebody, I wouldn't be firing into cars, and I wouldn't be stopping cars, because you know what? If they get away, it's not the end of the world. If you kill them, it's the end of the life of a person. Susan Collins, according to Semaphore, is taking credit for this policy change. I predicted this morning that this would benefit Susan Collins, this whole thing, a whole tragedy, because she's going to do stuff like this. We'll see if I end up being right. But she's now saying, I'm the one who had the influence to call the Secretary of Homeland Security and get this change instituted. Surprising to me, we haven't seen, at least as far as I've been told or seen myself, we haven't seen Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen yet. I'm surprised at that. The Atlantic says that the decision to suspend vehicles was made by Mark Wayne Mullen with the backing of the acting director of ICE, and that Susan Collins on social media says she spoke with Mullen last night and asked him to halt all non-urgent vehicles, ICE stops by non-urgent vehicles. When asked about the halt on vehicle stops, DSA said in a statement, "We are always evaluating our procedures to keep our officers safe and criminals off the streets. We will not disclose or discuss our law enforcement tactics." The Atlantic is reporting that the gentleman in question who fired the weapon, allegedly, I should say, is a new recruit who joined this year after working for the Veterans Affairs Police. We'll see if that turns out to be true. Tom Homan told Fox News, "This is just a temporary pause while we look at the incidents. I hear a lot of noise right now. This is going to affect ICE arrest, and it's not going to. When that alien leaves his home before he gets into a car, you can arrest him then." Cars are just a tricky thing, it appears. A man running from an encounter with U.S. immigration agents in Florida was struck and killed by a tractor trailer moments ago in St. Augustine, Florida. We'll see more about that. The Democratic candidates, like what we just showed you with Mr. Shaw in Maine, are all criticizing Susan Collins and saying that this is her fault for not doing more to change things. Here's Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, responding to the shooting. 112, please.
DHS officials coming to Congress and repeatedly saying over the last few months that they want to expand body camera usage. Does there need to be accountability on DHS from Congress here?
I don't know anything about this event. Okay, I was a little busy yesterday, so I'm going to reserve judgment. I know that there was a tragic shooting, and I'm not going to comment on it because I don't know. And you guys can mock me for not knowing that. I worked about 22 hours in the last few days, and I did not get the briefing on that yet. I will this morning. Yes.
All right. I'm not going to mock him, but I would tell his staff they should treat this seriously. Tim, did you guys break the story about the ICE agents ordered to cease all vehicle stops?
That we did, yeah. It was my colleague Jenny Terr, our immigration reporter.
That's a good news break.
What do you think? Great scoop.
What do you think of that? It's both a matter of politics and policy.
I think it's good on both fronts. I agree with you, Mark, that I think it would have been prudent for ICE to institute a policy like this after if not the first, then the second incident in Minneapolis. If for no other reason, then I think it would have been super reasonable for ICE or DHS broadly to say, we are focused narrowly on arresting and deporting the illegal immigrants. We will leave it up to local law enforcement to police and patrol the protesters. Now, I know that the line, again, with Alex Preddy and Renee Goodman was that the officers were in danger, varying degrees of, with the vehicular involved, various degrees of, obviously everyone has a different take on whether or not that happened. Much like Mike Johnson, I've been following the story, but we still haven't seen, I don't think, any footage or that many firsthand accounts. No one seems to be talking about this one. So it's not odd to me, but it's striking to me that after this one that no one is talking about, that everyone involved seems to want to kind of keep a little bit tamped down. This is when they make the change. And I think that's when the political angle comes in, right? Which is, let's not make hay out of this, right? In Minneapolis, ICE and DHS, Greg Bovino, who was still around at the time, were very quick to say not only did we do it, but we were right. These agents were threatened. That woman tried to hit us with a car. What else were they going to do? Now we don't see any footage. No one's releasing information, and they institute this policy. Whether or not, again, I generally trust Tom Homan. So if he says that this is a temporary reevaluation of their policies, I believe that, but it is also undeniably a great communications move and a great political strategy for ICE, for DHS, for the Trump administration, and subsequently for Republicans like Susan Collins.
Jim, let me say four things quickly, and then I want to go to you about the policy change and about why we haven't seen Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen, which surprises me. Number one, I don't read the chat, but I glance at it, and we should have talked more about the Houston case. Maybe we still should. That was my mistake. We should have talked more about the Houston incident. I don't know why we didn't. Just other stuff in the news. We should have. Two, just announced there's going to be a debate on Thursday amongst the Democratic Senate candidates in Maine on News Center Maine. Three, congratulations on the scoop, Tim. And four, JD Vance just showed up in Austin to tape Joe Rogan. That'll help sell books. Jim Kessler, what do you think of the policy change?
Well, I think it's a good policy change. I mean, ICE needs an overhaul. There needs to be some real reforms. This is an organization, federal agency that has way too much money too fast. I am not surprised that the agent involved in the shooting, the alleged shooting, is someone who is very new to the force. There are a lot of undertrained people who have very, positions of deep responsibility on the street over at ICE. They should be going after people who are violent criminals in the United States, not someone doing their laundry. This was also a case of mistaken identity. They thought they were arresting one person. It turned out it was somebody else that they shot and killed. And the last thing I'd say is they now at least don't have a hack running the agency and the department. The days of, the former South Dakota governor, Kristi Noem, doing this, and the other people that were running ICE, they were underqualified political hacks seeking to curry favor with the president. At least now they have professionals at the top, and maybe a little bit, that gives me a little bit more confidence that this agency can somehow reform itself.
Yeah, I'm really surprised we haven't seen the secretary. This is the third time I've said it, but I'm sort of stunned that we haven't seen him yet. He should go to Maine, really. But Jim, if you were the ED or chair of the Maine Democratic Party or a news organization in Maine, what standards would you set for debate eligibility?
Yeah, that's pretty tough. But I mean, I think, some level of support in the polls, like at least 5%.
Yeah, but there really aren't any polls. And as you know, it's not really an election.
Right.
Here's what they did. Here's what News Center Maine did. Kind of clever. They're letting in Troy Jackson, Shenna Bellows, Nirav Shah, and Jordan Wood because they all got at least 20% in their respective primaries last month. That's not a bad idea. Right?
Yeah,
I don't know who that excludes.
Right. I commend the people of the Democrats of Maine and the people of Maine. Like they're making lemonade out of these lemons. They're doing the best they can. It seems to me. All
right. Either of you have anything else you'd like to say about Maine writ large? Either the shooting or the Senate race?
I am continually fascinated by how things seem to fall into place for Susan Collins, whom I both respect but agree with whichever of you gentlemen said, I can't remember, at the top of the show, is a little bit overrated.
Jim said that. I think she's underrated.
I think Susan Collins is underrated in a lot of. I think that, again, what we see in this race, much like people are talking about the late Lindsey Graham, the constituent services, the fact that she spends time in the state, she knows the state. I think that's underrated, or at least kind of underappreciated, certainly by her opponents. But I am just fascinated. This is a woman who, for the past decade, the Republicans have been slamming as basically a Democrat. And now Graham Plattner on the ballot, Democrats are slamming her as worse to the right, more to the right than Donald Trump. She is somehow everything to everybody and nothing to nobody. And for any other candidate, this would be bad for them. But for Susan Collins, it's like the sea just parts. And I don't have that's not a political analysis. I don't have like a real point to make there, other than every day it's amazing to watch.
Yeah. So Susan Collins, I'll say this about her. She's older, obviously. 6 years older than last time she ran. She's a killer, and she's furious, like rage, white hot rage, furious. Still, after 6 years, that Chuck Schumer tried to beat her and spent all that money. And as you recall, she was down 8 in the final polls, and or 6 in the final polls, and she won by 8. She overperformed the final polls by 14 points, ladies and gentlemen, and she rubs it in Chuck Schumer's face every chance she gets, including today at the hearing where the two Supreme Court justices, Amy Coney Barrett and Elena Kagan, testified about the need for more money for the Supreme Court budget, a lot of it for security. Here is Susan Collins, when she wasn't on the phone with DHS, she attended the hearing. Here she is, taking Chuck Schumer's, grabbing by the back of the neck, walking down a Brooklyn street, finding someone who failed to clean up after their pooch and pushed his forehead right down to the pavement. Susan Collins, ladies and gentlemen, 115.
38% increase in the number of threats, that it is increasingly dangerous to be a Supreme Court justice these days. And it's appalling to me that some of the rhetoric is coming from public officials on both sides of the aisle who should know better than to levy personal and political attacks against the judiciary and the court specifically. For example, a senator
just to pick one
stood
example
in front of the Supreme Court building and called out 2 members by name, saying that they had released the whirlwind and that they will pay the price. Other public officials have called the court corrupt,
all right. For the uninitiated, the person who stood in front of the Supreme Court and said they'd reap the whirlwind was Chuck Schumer.
Language.
This is the tone of a gentleman who's a killer. And those who think that that performance suggests she's lost a step and she's not going to, with her super PAC, you can take this down, destroy the Democratic nominee unless the person rises to the occasion. In addition to being very far left, in addition to being chosen by 600 Maine liberals rather than the general election electorate, this person will be from a standing start trying to set up a campaign and a fundraising apparatus against a woman with millions of dollars in the bank, unlimited super PAC support, and a secret plan, I say secret in air quotes, to do opposition research and destroy them. This is what they're going to do to the nominee, ladies and gentlemen. They're going to find ways that they're not liberal enough for the socialists and drive a wedge there, and they're going to say they're a socialist. They'll do both because that's what you can do in the day and age in which we're living. So count me as someone, I wrote it this week in the Free Press, count me as someone who believes that until we see the Democratic nominee stood up and operational, you got to bet on the incumbent. Guys, thoughts on that?
I mean, she's tough. I look, this is a cycle in which candidates lose who are asleep at the switch, who aren't tending to their state or district every single day. And she never takes a day off.
Yeah.
So, and now whoever comes out on the Democratic side is going to come out in some ways this wounded creature. Now, there's still time to not be a wounded creature.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, it's one of the reasons why I went from being very bullish about Maine this time last year to, with Plattner, I thought, okay, we have a con man, aided and abetted by co-conspirators. We're done. To now, I think Democrats have a real shot at beating Susan Collins, but I'd still give her the edge.
Yeah.
Agree completely. I agree completely with both of you. And Mark, as you said earlier, I think that this is one of the ways where she is underrated. She is a killer on the campaign trail. She will electioneering or campaigning, politicking, whatever you want to call it, is an area where, again, partially because of the ways in which people kind of overplay her as this moderate or whatever they see in her, what they want to criticize about the Republican Party. But then when it gets down to it, she could pull it out. I think she was going to pull it out over Graham Plattner, but it would have been closer. And I think another issue is that, and I really don't say this to be cheeky, I swear, is that the politics aside, there are a lot of people who can run just as progressive as Graham Plattner. The thing that had me worried about Graham Plattner was his ferocity, his intensity, right? The only way to beat a killer is to come as a killer. They bring a knife, you bring a gun. Plattner brought a gun, and that was going to work, except for the fact that all of the revelations about the things he's done in his past made it impossible for him to stay in the race, but made it harder for him to run on that I am a killer image. And I think it is going to make it impossible for any of the Democrats who appear on that debate stage on Thursday to have that same sort of ferocity.
Yeah.
Because again, this whole race is covered by like real life outside of politics ferocity. So it's again, a fascinating, everything's coming up soon.
Yeah, very well said by both of you. Two other Senate notes, then to Iran. New poll from, I believe, the Detroit News, two-person race in the Senate race. Jim, you can do a little jig there if you'd like. Shows Stevens up by like 7 points. Not surprising to me, honestly, because in a two-person race, socialists sometimes can have a ceiling. There it is, Haley Stevens, 48. Abdullah Sayed, 41, 10% undecided. So that'll cheer a lot of Democrats. And in South Carolina, the Wall Street Journal and CBS are claiming they're the first to report President Trump's private interest in backing Russell Fry. We talked about it ad nauseum on the morning meeting, so maybe they should credit us, but whatever. Anyway, all right, Iran. This is not a surprise. You guys Monty Python fans at all? Would you compare the MOU more to the Knights of Ni, the guy who lost his limbs, or the dead parrot? Which would you say was a more apt metaphor?
I gotta go with Mark. I gotta go with the dead parrot here.
The dead parrot. Maybe the dead parrot with some limbs cut off, because after President Trump basically cleared it dead, here's what the Iranian deputy foreign minister said. Iran announces its full withdrawal from the memorandum of understanding due to U.S. violations, and including Iran will exercise full sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz, no matter the costs, and Iran will never request negotiations with the United States. All of this comes as no surprise to some people, including the gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Tom Cotton, today declaring some degree of pleasure that the charade of negotiations is as dead as the parrot on Monty Python. 101, please.
I know you're shocked that Iran is not upholding the end of the bargain. I just couldn't have imagined this, and President Trump has pointed out many times that he was skeptical about it as well, and I think we've all been proven correct. And as President Trump has indicated in the past few days, he's had it. He knows these people aren't serious, even about this modest temporary agreement. Therefore, how could you ever expect them to strike a much larger, more comprehensive agreement about their nuclear program? So, as I've long said, I think we need to finish the job militarily, to leave their military in a total shambles, as we've already left their nuclear program. We need to get the blockade back in place, which President Trump has announced he's going to do. We need to keep the strait open militarily so it doesn't hurt Americans in their pocketbook, which we have the capability to do. And then we can consider the matter closed. No ships will be coming in or out of Iran's ports. Iran won't control the Strait of Hormuz, and they'll be weakened each and every day. And the people will get more and more frustrated with their own government that has been oppressing them for 47 years.
Parenthetically, in his spare time, Senator Cotton is trying to stop the permanent daylight savings bill. I don't know why he feels so strongly about it, but he said he failed to block it originally because he thought he hadn't communicated to his staff the depth of his opposition to permanent daylight savings, and because he thought another senator was going to take the lead on it. And he said he's still searching for someone else to blame, but he would take responsibility for failing to block it. Back on Iran, another person interested in President Trump's on again, off again. Every newspaper now has a news analysis thumbsucker piece about how the president's, is nowhere because, he gave up the tolls this morning, the 25% or 20% toll. But the notion that the Pentagon is going to blockade Iranian ships and escort through other ships without the Iranians attacking and causing them to back off again, it just doesn't seem likely. Here's Senator Schumer, the aforementioned Senator Schumer, talking about the president's flip-flop, 105, please.
Trump's supposed ceasefire deal has completely collapsed. Our troops are coming under attack. The Strait of Hormuz is a minefield. Gas prices are going back up, and Donald Trump is totally out of his depth. In fact, Donald Trump is drowning in the Strait of Hormuz because he has no plan. He had no plan when he got America into this war, and he has no plan on how to get us out. Trump started the war without authorization, without a strategy, without an exit. The reason that we have War Powers Act is to force an administration to think through the consequences of going to war ahead of time. Trump, of course, didn't listen. Both finally, after weeks.
He seems almost as happy as Tom Cotton, but for different reasons. Tim, what happens next? Because I can tell you now, there's not going to be a sustained and successful blockade and escort program. There's just not. So what happens now?
No, first of all, I think I was about to say the exact same thing. Watching that clip, I half expect Schumer to end by saying, and that's why we need to go in and we need to decimate the Iranian Navy, and we need to blow up Pickaxe Mountain, and right. So, I mean, on the one, to set aside the Schumer of it all for a second, because I do wonder what's the end of this, right? Obviously, Schumer's going to say we should just pack up and go home. But I agree with his colleague, the gentleman from Arkansas. And I've been saying this from the beginning, and I'm even more convinced of it now, which is that in for a penny, in for a pound. You cannot negotiate with the Iranians. Simply because they were never going to agree to these terms. This is not, I mean, obviously, there's an ideological component to this, but I don't say this because I think the Iranian government is inherently evil necessarily, but because they're inherently untrustworthy, and they have every incentive in the book to cheat, lie, steal, violate the terms of the agreement. So there's two things we could do. One is return to the status quo, which at this point just seems like a waste of everyone's time, money, and political capital. And I think in a more important way would be bad for the world, because the persistence of the Islamic Republic of Iran is bad for the world. Or we could finish the job. We could, if not completely wipe them off the face of the earth, then bomb and fight them to a point where they surrender, or some moderates take over, or whatever it is that happens in post Ayatollah regimes. But I think we have to commit.
Yeah. I don't read the chat, Jim, but I do glance at it occasionally. I saw somebody mocking me for posing as a blockade expert. Well, I'm a reporter who's covered the Pentagon for a long time, but also I know quite a bit about history, and I know quite a bit about what the Pentagon, based on reporting, what the Pentagon thinks of this mission. Remember, the president threatened to do this once before, and he took it off about 30 hours later, and there's a reason for that. So I don't believe our national security and foreign policy debates should be restricted to so-called experts. I believe everybody should be allowed to work hard to understand, if you're a reporter, do some reporting. And I will tell you that this cannot work, because if it could work, it would have been done 3 weeks ago. This is an impossible mission. It is an impossible mission. And by the way, if you talk to the Pentagon people about their plans of how to control the strait, it requires boots on the ground. Not thousands, but several hundred on the Iranian coast. And if you think in July, before a November midterm, President Trump is putting 400, 500, 600, 800 Americans on the ground on the Iranian coast, if that's the case, I'd like you to consider buying a bridge from Corey Lewandowski. Jim Kessler, what happens next?
Well, first, I just want to comment on something that Tim said. He said, when you said, like, finish the job, I don't think there is any finishing the job. I mean, that's what Putin is trying to do in Ukraine, and that's been over 4 years. And I think what we are seeing is that smaller countries, less powerful countries, have found a way to survive asymmetrical warfare against superpowers using other leverage and technologies that, we weren't prepared for, and we should have been prepared for.
Yeah.
What do I think happens next? There's a pattern, and the pattern is this. By Friday, it will look like there's a new agreement. By Monday or Tuesday...
I got to stop you. An agreement between the U.S. and Iran?
Yes, they'll be moving closer. Maybe, maybe I'll miss it by a Friday.
Jim
and then
Kessler.
by Monday or Tuesday, it falls apart. We've seen this happen 6 or 7 times. Now, maybe this breach seems bigger than it was in the past, but there's a pattern to Friday things start looking better. And if you look at the markets right now, the markets aren't freaking out.
No,
the stock market was up today.
It was.
Oil jumped 10% yesterday, but it jumped like a point or two today. It's like at $80 a barrel. That's not a market that feels like we're going back to March.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jim, I have to say, and I say this with affection and respect, this bridge that Corey's going to sell you, it goes from Lake Winnipesaukee to the Atlantic Ocean. It's an incredible.
I've been to both places. I love Lake Winnipesaukee.
Yeah, it's a great place.
Mark, I'm not saying there'll be an agreement. What I'm saying is there will be the sounds of an agreement that calms things down, and then we're just going to go through this cycle over and over again. There's no end to this.
I will eat a crate of Spanish anchovies if there's a deal. I don't think the president and the vice president can look America in the face again and say there's a deal with the Iranians.
Oh, sure,
What, say again? How could that be? How could they say, the president last week said they were scum. He said they're crazy. He can't make a deal. He said that
about Lindsey Graham at one point, and then they became best friends. I mean, come on.
True.
I have to. I'll be a Supreme Court justice. I would like to issue a concurring opinion to Jim, which is I think that given the particular ferocity of the recent exchange of words and fire between Iran and the United States, I think this Friday is too soon. But I agree with everything else that Jim said, and I think Mark, I think you're right to think that it would be absolutely crazy for the president and vice president to do this whole thing again. But I'm with Jim. I think that it's going to happen again.
Amazing.
Amazing. I really do.
Amazing. Come back and watch me eat the anchovies because, but I'm very surprised you guys think that. I'm with Tom Cotton. Well, we'll see. All right, let's talk about a few other topics. Into your questions, and again, raise your hand if you're on the platform. And remember, stay with us at 6 o'clock. Special polling presentation as part of our Capital Intel series with our partners at HarrisX. You'll be interested in this poll. Here's President Trump, another curtain raise of his Thursday speech, which I continue to predict he may cancel when he finds out the networks won't cover it live if he's going to talk about the 2020 election being stolen. 120, please.
The world and around the nation are anticipating your big announcement on Thursday night regarding election machines and integrity. Can you give us sort of a sneak peek about what to expect and tell
Well, I'd rather save it. It will concern that subject, and we'll have a couple of other things to say also. But I'd rather save it, but it's really big news. It's really, really big news. And our country has to shape up. But that's what we're going to be talking about Thursday is it doesn't get bigger, because without free and fair elections, you don't have a country. We'll be discussing other things too, but it's going to be a very big announcement. Yeah.
I don't even think Fox News would cover live a speech about this. I'll tell you who's fascinated by this and will raise another boatload of money off of it. The gentleman from Georgia, who reportedly the president's going to say was elected by the Dutch or some other foreign power. Here's John Ossoff, barely able to contain his laughter. 121, please.
Have you had any sort of contact by the Department of Justice, by investigators? Has your campaign or anyone associated with you been contacted about any of your elections and asked questions about it as part of an investigation that you're aware of?
Not to my knowledge, no.
And to answer, just to kind of follow up on what Tia said, if they declare your election ineligible, what can you actually do about that to prevent some sort of lack of faith in the system to the voters of Georgia?
Again, just consider for a moment that we understand the president may be threatening to declare sitting United States senators illegitimate. If that is the course of action he pursues, he is calling Georgia voters illegitimate. From the very moment Georgia voters rejected him in 2020, he's been on the warpath because he was humiliated by the rebuke that Georgians dealt him. And he was humiliated and furious in particular as a committed lifelong racist that it was black voters in Georgia who were instrumental in his defeat.
Has the Senate Intelligence Committee...
Okay. A few more things to tell you about, and then to your questions. Darlene Graham was sworn in today as to replace her late brother as a senator from South Carolina. E. Jean Carroll got her $5 million. It was in escrow. And now that the courts have ruled that she's entitled to the money, she got $5 million from Donald Trump. And Jack Smith, according to Senator Grassley, it previously created a lot of big ruckus when Jack Smith allegedly had the metadata of communications between Republican lawmakers and Donald Trump around January 6th. Now, according to Senator Grassley, President Jack Smith's team actually read the content of the messages, dozens of lawmakers of both parties. This is a developing story. We'll cover it more tomorrow on the morning meeting. Tim, are you guys covering that story?
We are, but not as well as my good friend Josh Christensen there, who's
Christensen, your fellow Washington bureau chief, man. That guy's a baby-faced killer. I would if someone asked me to be the Washington bureau chief of a place, I would say the minute Josh retires, sure, but I'm not going up head to head with that guy. New episode of Next Up posted now. My reported monologue is on the New York Times and their inexplicable coverage of Graham Plattner and regarding their big investigative piece in which they just wrote an inexplicable piece. It looked like catch and soften. And then how they've treated their main source. When you treat a source, or if it's a source on a sensitive story, you can't mistreat them. You have to respond to their concerns. And Lindsay has expressed a bunch of concerns. They've just not responded. They even went so far as to write a whole article about criticism of the story, and they addressed maybe 10% of the concerns that she'd raised. So that's my reported monologue. Amongst my guests are Patty Solis Doyle. Jim, this is for you first. We talked about, I said to her, when Hillary Clinton ran in 2008, what were the big attacks on her left? And one was the Iraq War vote. I can't remember what she said the other one was. But the point is, the Democratic Party left has moved further to the left than in 2008, and they're more influential in the party than they were in 2008. Here's Patty Solis Doyle, one of the smartest Democrats I know, on that issue. 124, please, from Next Up.
I think it's generational. I think we have young people coming of age who are, having a hard time finding a job, have strong views on Israel and Gaza, who having a hard time being able to afford to, buy a home, etc. And it's the new generation of voters who are like, this, maybe we should take a look at this. This is not so crazy. And I think what the 2028ers are going to have problems with is doing what Bill Clinton did so well in '92, this triangulation of going more right, but keeping the base engaged.
Yeah. Thank you. Somebody put in the chat the correct answer. The other thing Patty referenced was that Hillary was asked by Tim Russert about driver's licenses for people in the country illegally. And she didn't want to piss off the left, but of course she didn't think people in the country illegally should have driver's licenses. But her answer, I'll paraphrase, was humana, humana, humana. The other candidates didn't get asked the question, even though they were equally stumped by it. But again, you consider those two positions now versus any moderate who goes to New Hampshire to have a town hall is going to have 20 young people in the front row chanting from the river to the sea and demanding to abolish ICE. Jim, how does somebody run for president with the party this far left in terms of the activist, energized base of the party?
You have to realize as a Democrat running for the nomination in that more center or center-left lane that the majority of voters in Democratic primaries think like you. That's not the way it looks on Blue Sky. That might not be what shows up at the town hall meetings, but they are pragmatic voters and they want a centrist, moderate, center-left candidate. And in 2018, after AOC knocked off Joe Crowley, there were photos of me saying, is centrism dead in the Democratic Party? And, all the energies on the left. And by 2020, Joe Biden, who was the most moderate in the race, not only won the primary, he won it in a knockout. He moved left once he became president. That was his mistake. But I just think if you're a Democrat and you're falling for this, you're not going to win the nomination.
Brilliantly said. Tim, is Jim speaking with his head or his heart there?
I think he's speaking with his head. I've agreed with pretty much everything Jim has said. I
Love this guy.
respect. Yeah, I respect the hell out of Third Way. I think the problem is that the heart, and maybe it might be a little bit, his head might be wishful thinking. I don't know. I don't know if your party's with you, Jim. I don't know if you. I mean, you say. I guess the question is to you're talking to these candidates and saying they think the voters think more like you than the folks on Blue Sky. What I see and what I worry about is that increasingly the candidates do think the way the people on Blue Sky think, right? I think that's the issue, and so I mean, yes, I think your advice to Democratic candidates is 1,000% spot on. And then the question is, A, are Democrats willing to listen to the Third Way advice, and B, are the candidates who would even consider listening to the Third Way advice and then maybe ignore it, are they dwindling in number? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I will say, Jim,
you would know better than me. You would know better than me.
Jim has history on his side. The Democratic Party has always dominated this way, except twice in 2016 and 2020, they had to basically break the rules and use every bit of power of the establishment to keep Bernie Sanders from being nominated. But with that small asterisk,
I don't agree with that, because in 2016, Bernie Sanders, he ran a spectacular race, but the reason why Bernie Sanders was so close in the delegate count is because he dominated the caucuses, where the turnout is much, much less. He got 61% of the vote in the caucuses and only 43% of the vote in the primaries. And primaries, the government runs that, and the caucuses, the party runs that. So he won in the place where the parties won. In 2020, no, Joe Biden, no one thought Joe Biden was going to win.
Jim, first of all, I just have to push back gently. In 2016, thems was the rules. There were caucuses. So you can say all you want that Sanders wouldn't have won in the primaries, but there were caucuses. And number two,
I'm not saying he broke the rules. I'm just saying the rules there, there were 16 caucus states, and that's where he got most of the delegates.
Yeah. In 2020, if Barack Obama had not gone to Amy Klobuchar and Pete Buttigieg, some people are sick of hearing me say this, but I never tire of it. If he hadn't gone to them and say, I need you both to do something no one has ever done in the history of presidential politics. I need you to quit a race where you have money in the bank and a chance to be the nominee. No one's ever done it. And Barack Obama got them both to do it at the nick of time, because if he hadn't, Bernie would have swept Super Tuesday. Primaries, by the way, crowded primaries. No winner take all, but Bernie would have been the nominee if Barack Obama hadn't pulled that off.
Well, Elizabeth Warren could have dropped out, and she didn't.
Yeah, but that didn't affect it. That helped.
It did, because Joe Biden won Massachusetts.
Yeah, but she got no votes. I take your point, though. All right, ladies and gentlemen, there's more news, but I can just tell you, Jim Kessler and his colleagues are focused like a laser beam on this. They are determined to smote, is that the word? The far left of the party. And I'm telling you, they can change history here, because on its current trajectory, you got a bunch of people who are scared of their own shadows. The very same reasons Barack Obama almost never talks about this, the very reason Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer pretend the socialists aren't taking over the party, all those same reasons will infect these Democratic candidates like Rahm Emanuel and Governor Shapiro, because their first town hall in New Hampshire, they'll be drowned out by people chanting from the river to the sea. And
if they votes.
They maybe
drowned out, they'll win votes.
But if they have stiffened spines, it will be because of Jim Kessler. Good luck to you, sir. See if you can do it. All right, here come the community members. Again, stick with us. In about 10 minutes, Mark Penn will be here, and we'll all run through a big poll together, and you won't want to miss that. Here comes Jim McBride, who turned off his camera and screwed everything up. Jim, do you want to ask a question? You got to turn your camera on. Let's see. Let's see if he does. There you go. All right. Welcome in, sir. Thank you for being part of Two Way. Tell folks who don't know where you are. Drive safely, and what's on your mind for Tim and Jim.
Oh, no, Jim, you're muted.
Got to unmute, sir. Are you able to do that without hitting a pedestrian? ICE officer. There you go. Go ahead.
Yeah, that part wasn't my fault. So I think you guys had to let me
Yes,
talk.
sir. Yes, sir.
So yeah, I just wanted to follow up on what Jim was talking about. That this process, I don't know if the electorate will be more liberal or not in Maine, the Maine Dems, but this is the most convoluted nonsense I can think of. I've run for DNC vice chair. I run at every level of Democratic Party, and I've seen in Virginia, we've had 27,000 people vote in a caucus for a congressional district after a member passed away. So I think that having all these elections this weekend, it's like 16 sites or whatever, and like electing 500 people to go to a convention, which is going to be a secret ballot, that is going to be a giant mess. They could have waited 2 weeks and had next weekend had thousands of people show up at 16 or dozens of sites to vote just straight for the candidate. So I think it's going to turn off a lot of Platinum voters, but it really should turn off all Democrats, because I think we're sick of the coronations and the bureaucracy that is just causing us more problems. So
Yeah,
I just was wondering if anybody
Jim,
had thoughts.
yeah, well, I'm going to let Jim and Tim respond, but they couldn't use more time because there's a statutory deadline to replace the nominee. So they're using the window they have, and
yeah, July 25th they could have had elections statewide.
There's literally no example, as best I can find in American history, of having a real primary. They do firehouse primaries, but that's basically a caucus. People can pretend it's called a primary, but I don't know how many more people would vote in that. Anyway, you're right. There could be more votes. Jim Kessler, what do you think of the main process as compared to trying to do a firehouse primary?
Well, it's not going to be perfect, but you have to realize, Jim McBride, a primary is run by the state and the state government, and the state government is not going to be running a primary.
But a party can run a so-called firehouse primary,
right,
where you have limited number of polling places. But Jim McBride, putting that together with ballot integrity and poll workers, it's beyond what a small state party could do. It just is.
It's hard.
I think we can do it in Virginia. We've done a lot of special primaries like this party run.
But there's more time and they're more predictable, and they've got a tradition of doing it. And how many people vote in those firehouse primaries? Any idea?
I mean, we had 27,000 when we elected Jennifer McClellan. We had a massive turnout because she was running against kind of a Graham Plattner type candidate. But I think that we can do these kind of things. I mean, first of all, you're going to run 500 elections this weekend. You could have ran one next weekend at 16 sites or more.
Well, they're not running 500. They're running 16, and some of them are going to be virtual.
Well, they're going to elect 500 delegates.
They
so
are.
That's going to be a lot of.
But
that's going to be a lot of bureaucracy, and these people are going to be voting in a secret ballot. So who are you voting for? I mean,
but it's like a caucus in the sense that you just have to have security in place and ballot integrity in place for a couple hours, either in person or virtual. If you have a firehouse primary, you got to staff multiple locations, for ballot hours. It's just not something state parties normally do. And to do it as a pop-up in 2 weeks, I'm amazed they've done what they've done, let alone trying to.
Well, I'll give you one more example of why it's convoluted. The state uses ranked choice voting, and they're going to do a convention with multiple rounds of voting rather than ranked choice. They could have knocked the thing out in under an hour.
Yeah, I don't know. I was surprised they didn't explain that decision, because the state does use ranked choice voting, and they chose not to. I don't know if it helps or hurt anybody. We talked about that on the morning meeting, but I don't know. I found it odd they didn't explain why they weren't. They're going to do rounds as opposed to. Yeah, go ahead.
What I was just going to say is that in a convention, you can do runoffs because you only have 500 people. But if they had actually opened it up to thousands of people, ranked choice voting would have been necessary.
Yeah.
But they didn't choose that option. So they actually could have had a better turnout and a quicker election I think, with ranked choice voting. But it is what it is. So.
All right, Jim, thank you. Tim, thoughts on Jim points?
I think that New Englanders yearn for the town meeting. And
yeah.
So I don't know. I think this is. I get what Jim McBride was saying, but I think, as both you, Mark, and Kessler said, it's the necessity of things. I'm not sure if Democrats are sick of the coronations, but we don't need to get into that.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
Yeah, I hear you. Colleen, welcome in. Thank you for being here. Tell folks who don't know where you are what's on your mind for Jim and Tim.
Hi, Mark. Thank you. Hi, guys. Thanks. Colleen from Long Island. I hope, Jim Kessler, that you can smote the progressives. That would be great. But I was talking about Iran. Basically, everybody knows, or I know, the MOU is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. It's been irrelevant from the beginning. It's just a delaying tactic because in the end, everyone knows Iran, or people I'm sure President Trump knows, because he said it repeatedly, we cannot leave a nuclear Iran for the next generation. And that is a moral responsibility of our current day politics. We have to sort them out. And I think it will only end up after the midterms into another military intervention where we have to take care of them. Because in the interim, we're rebuilding militarily. We're sorting out the Strait of Hormuz, which, by the way, they should have been mitigating a decade ago. As soon as people realized that Iran could do this at any time, they should have been, in the JPOA, they should have said, well, we have to start taking different measures and look for alternatives, because at any time the old Ayatollah could die and, more hardliners could take over. Yeah. So this thing blaming Trump for this, I blame them. If I was president back in 15 years ago and realized that, I would be making steps towards preventing this from happening.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Colleen, Tim, and then Jim.
Yeah, I think you make a really great point there, Colleen, which is that a lot of this is that there's been a lot of can kicking. There's been a lot of kicking the can down the road. I understand that not everyone feels this way. I very much think, as I said earlier in the show, that the fundamentalist regime in Iran needed to be dealt with at some point or another. I think that, again, the president, and this is why I applauded President Trump for taking action when he did 3 months to a million years ago, which sometimes it feels like, because someone needed to do something, someone needed to get the ball rolling. That's why, like Tom Cotton, I hope that that this is brought to some kind of a resolution through force, whatever that is, because, to your point again, Colleen, it's weird. If we go back to any kind of the status quo after this, it is just going to kick the can that much further down the road. So I think very well said. I couldn't agree more. And it's the rare instance, I think, when blaming it on your predecessors or putting blame on your predecessors in politics is not entirely unfair. I think that's a very reasonable criticism for Donald Trump and for others to make of presidents who've abdicated this in the past.
Well said, Colleen. Well said, Tim. Jim Kessler, over to you. No pressure.
What if Iran has just discovered they don't need nuclear weapons at all to control the region and have leverage over Israel and the United States? Because I think they just learned that.
Yeah. Colleen, thank you. Grateful to you. In just a couple minutes, Mark Penn will be here, and we're going to run through a poll, a new Harvard X poll, Harris X poll. You can read the full poll right now if you want to follow along. Mark will be presenting a truncated version, but the full poll now, go to tway.tv. You'll see a link at the top of our homepage. You can see the full poll. Again, this is an extraordinary opportunity. We're so proud to partner with Harris X and to be able to present to you an opportunity to listen to a poll presentation of an extremely professional one of the kind that's normally not available to people, except the Jim Kesslers of the world who have fancy pollsters. And then to be able to ask questions of Mark about the poll. So stay tuned for that. Thanks to Jim Kessler. Thanks to Tim Rice, both of you, for being here. Tim, where can people see your stuff?
I am on X at Tim Rice DC, and of course, everyone should head over to dailywire.com to see great scoops like our ICE story today and plenty more.
And make sure you have Tim Rice LA reserved in case they transfer you to the LA bureau.
That's right.
Jim Kessler, where can they follow you in Third Way?
I'm on Twitter at Third Way Kessler, and thirdway.org. We put out stuff all the time.
Yeah. And again, the new episode of Next Up is available now. Go to YouTube to Next Up Halperin, or listen to it as a podcast. And tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern Time, a morning meeting will be here, and this program will be back in 23 hours. We're going to pause for just a beat or two To reset, thanks again to Jim and to Tim. You guys are welcome to stay and follow along the poll if you wish, but otherwise we'll see you soon. And everybody stand by in just a moment. Mark Penn will be here for our latest episode of Capital Intel in, somebody will count me down here, but in just moments.
Rolling credits shortly. Please stand by. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6.
Welcome in, everybody. Thank you for joining latest edition of Capital Intel, partnership between HarrisX and Two-Way, an opportunity for you all to hear some polling data, new polling data, methodologically sound and broad sample to understand what's going on in the country, some questions you'll be familiar with you, and some questions on some new topics that are in the news. We're pleased to partner with HarrisX and pleased to welcome, as I told you before, one of the greatest pollsters in the history of polling, Mark Penn is here joining us now. Mark, thank you for being here. Grateful to you. Unmute if you would. There you go.
I appreciate that introduction.
All right. Pleased to have you here. And again, folks, our normal procedure, Mark will run through a deck. You can follow along on the two-way.tv, the link there to the poll, although it's the full poll, but you'll be able to follow along. And Mark will present it, and then he and I will talk about it just a bit. But this is for you. This is an unprecedented, in our view, opportunity to ask questions about a poll. You can focus on the methodology, but just as good, maybe better, would be to focus on the substance. And Mark can drill down deeper on some questions if you'd like. So with that, Mark, thank you for being here. I turn it over to you, and my colleagues will put up the deck, and away we go.
Great. And I think actually what you really want to focus on is you know that it's a 50-50 country, more or less. And so you want to focus on why is that, and what do the questions tease out about what is the debate going on in people's minds? Because remember that the swing voters whom you think of will actually think a lot of things that are contradictory in nature. And how they resolve that contradiction is how they come to vote. And so with that in mind, and I've done a few interesting questions here too this month on socialism, which I find somewhat amusing, actually. But most importantly, if you dive into the poll, it's actually the second question, which is, but probably the single most important question is, do you think the economy is on the right track or the wrong track? And as you can see, people think it's on the wrong track. Now, a lot of people, was it on the wrong track before Iran, after Iran? Yeah, it was on the wrong track here through the entire administration. And the last time it was on the right track was like for a couple of days in the Biden administration and most of the first Trump administration until the pandemic hit. And which, for whatever reason, even though the economic numbers are basically the same, everybody thought the economy under Trump 1 was spectacular, and everybody thinks this economy has problems, which it does. And next. Okay. This is just another version of that question, which is, do you think the economy today is strong or weak? And again, you've had basically you see weakness, and you see that more or less now you're at 54-46 weak. Okay, next. So this is your basic approval question. Do you approve or disapprove of Donald J. Trump is doing as president? And the way these things work is, if you're in 40 to 45, that's generally difficult. If you're in 45 to 50, that's generally actually pretty good in terms of the new metrics. And when I worked with President Clinton, we got up to 74. Those were the days when a Democrat could get Republicans. And as I always explain, to get over 50 and you're a Republican, you need Democrats. And none of those things are happening anymore, at least during this particular series of presidencies. So nobody has really kind of breached it. You look, again, I would focus on the difference men and women. Men are at 45, women are at 39. If you focus, again, this 18 to 24 group is really a special group. Unlike anything that I've ever seen in politics before, they're at 25. You know, if you, the rest of the groups are really in their 40s. And if you look at whites, they're in the high 40s. Blacks are at 23. Hispanics are at 30. That's probably the biggest problem that the president has electorally because Hispanics were the critical vote. He needs that at 45 or 50. Asians at 35, which is okay. Again, suburban a little more squeezed than it should be, considering there's a lot of votes there. Rural at 52. Next. GOP approval, as you can see, generally been trending down. It's at 43, 57. Again, kind of a tough position. You know, when you're in these low 40s, that's when voter anger tends to catch up to you. Next. Right. But Democratic approval is most exactly the same. So, as you know, if the president's at 42 and the Republicans are at 43 and the Democrats are at 43, that tells you that there's a group of voters who are, we'll call them the swing voters. They don't like the president, they don't like the Democrats, and they don't like the Republicans. Generally, that's not a good thing, but that's what we got. Next. So then we have a basic question of favorable, unfavorable. And, and not everybody is well known enough to kind of register favorable, unfavorable. RFK Jr. has for the longest time, and still today, has one of the few positive ratings in politics because he's got all the Republicans and he has a few Democratic moms who think he protects their kids. Then everybody else, except now Marco Rubio, who has now slipped up to +1. He has a green number there. That's really a pretty good showing. He's still got a third of the people who really don't know enough about him to make a rating. Everyone else is negative. Johnson is only -7. Zohan Mandami is -7. Chuck Schumer manages to be at -19. He is actually more disliked than Netanyahu, who's now kind of at -15, which again, his, you know, that's some drop. And of course, Tucker Carlson, -15, and Vladimir Putin, luckily, is at negative, whatever that is, 54. Next. Then let's take a look at our institutions. So luckily, I think the top institution is the United States of America, but you don't get above 74, right? So no matter who you are or what you are, as we used to say, motherhood and apple pie, it seems to be 74 is that top. 74, 17. So you have a bunch of people who are saying, I'm not gonna give you a rating on America. The military, you look at the recovery of the police here, and then it falls pretty dramatically to 50, right? The Supreme Court's at 47, but if you notice that these all have pretty good greens, and part of what we're watching in the poll, free enterprise. Free enterprise is a very popular word. It's at +40. Capitalism, which is exactly the same thing as free enterprise, right? Is +11. So, you know, a handle or a word does make a dramatic difference. And then when you get to the negatives, a MAGA, and then I've also put in here, you know, there's all this talk about Israel. Israel is at 37-37. That 37-37 is going to be like 65% were the Republicans, and it's going to be like 25 Democrats, because what's happened to Israel is that it has been attacked in a partisan way. And so the split now is pretty much by party. But what people forget is that while Israel is at 0, Hezbollah and Hamas are at -43, they're at -48, and Iran, the principal opponent of Israel and the United States, is at -51. And so every article that you see tends to only say support for Israel drops. Well, as you can see, support for everybody on the previous chart dropped, and that nobody is even close to 50, and that Israel, the president's at 42 and Israel's at 37. You have to understand that there's this general dislike of virtually everything, except the military has really come up here. You'll see free enterprise, but don't forget that the Palestinian Authority is -28, Russia's -50, communism -55, Iran -51, and Hamas and Hezbollah, as I said before. Next. What's the most important issue? The economy, price increases, inflation, affordability. Overwhelmingly, the discontent here, as you can see, it's very simple. It's been this way. Every month we do this poll of late. It's more or less the same story. They have a lot of opinions on a lot of stuff, but they really don't matter much. What really seems to matter is the people are unhappy with the economy. They haven't gotten over inflation that they hadn't experienced in 25 years. They don't think the economy is as good as a lot of the overall numbers would indicate. Next. But having said all that, our congressional horse race is 50-50. So we're not showing some Democratic landslide. We're showing basically a country that's split plus or minus 2 points. They don't seem to care about anything, really. They're unhappy, so they're not suddenly going to. So you'd say the thought process would be against the pattern, but as you'll see later on, the very last question, who do you trust with the economy more, Trump and the Republicans or the Democrats in Congress? Trump and the Republicans win that. So again, you're still saying the only people that are disliked more than the Republicans or the Democrats, or in this case, about the same. So this is going to be very close. That's how I read this. Next. Okay, voters broadly back. Interesting. So we did a revised list of issues. I thought the Trump accounts would be more popular. They came out. Probably the Trump account came out 58-42, and most likely the reason why they came out 58-42 is, come on, Mark Halperin, you know the answer to this. Why did the Trump accounts?
Because they're called Trump accounts, Mark.
Because they're called Trump accounts, right. Because every word makes a difference. If I called them the free enterprise accounts with exactly the same thing, they would be at 90%. Okay. So, but the fact that they're Trump accounts, they're still at 58. Because I was really scratching my head for a few minutes on how this is. And
if Mother Teresa married Donald Trump and she was Mother Teresa Trump, her approval rating couldn't break 60.
If you pretty much, again, you kind of look at this and, wow, the Republicans have a pretty good set of issues, right? If they could get their message out, in a way that's different from the way that they're delivering their message, they actually have a number of things here that are really quite popular. And remember that deporting immigrants who are here illegally and have committed crimes is 79%. And requiring proof of citizenship and photo ID is 70%. But they're not voting on these things. They're voting mostly on partisanship and the economy. Next. In general, do you think we're better? So here's some questions that I decided to put in about socialism. Okay, do you think that we're better off with free enterprise or socialism? And free enterprise wins 78-22. Okay, and among Democrats, that's 32. And if I went to young Democrats, it would be probably 50-50. Thinking about the future of America, do you think we should? So this is an interesting question that I don't think, asked. Think about the future of America. Do you think we should continue to be a mix of capitalism with social welfare programs that assist the needy and subsidize insurance marketplaces for healthcare? Or should it move towards a fully socialist system? 83-17. Okay. So you wonder how socialist politicians are getting so far when there's not a lot of underlying support here for socialism. Next. And then I sort of probed, Under socialism, do you think people can own their own homes or does the state own them? Well, most people said you get to own your own home under socialism. Under socialism, do you think you can own your own business or does the state own them? Well, that was closer, 57-43. If you notice, Democrats believe that you get to own your own home and you get to own your own business under socialism. So, and whereas Republicans think that's generally not the case. Next. Under socialism, do you think rights like religious freedom and freedom of speech are guaranteed rights for the people, or does the state determine those rights? Yeah, they thought they were guaranteed. And would you want a system of government in which government controls freedom of religion and speech, or do you prefer a system which these rights of the people and cannot be taken away, which is the essence, obviously, of the Declaration of Independence? And that flips to 77-23. Although 23, 23, I have to look at who the 23 are, but they say those are the non-free speech absolutionists are 23. Next. Would you prefer a system of government that allows you to start your own business, or do you think only the state? So now, rather than ask them what socialism is, I ask them, would you prefer a system of government that allows you to start your own business, or only the state should own businesses? I mean, the essential element of socialism is state ownership of the means of production and businesses. So 88% of Americans, including 85% of Democrats, want to own their own business. Do they want to own their own home? 88% want to own their own home, including 86% of Democrats. Next. Would you prefer a system of government that allows you to earn whatever you can? And then let's try another way. Do you want a system that allows you to earn whatever you can based on your merit and work, or do you prefer a system in which earning money was limited and everyone got about the same? Okay? So again, this is the essence that everybody talks about. That was 88-12, including 86% of Democrats, 92% of Republicans. So how are we having a public debate about these issues when they're 90-10? That's what's so fascinating. Do you think that when it's been tried in other countries, socialism has mostly worked or mostly devolved into harsh dictatorships? 62% said mostly devolved. Interesting, Democrats were 50-50. Young Democrats have no history and think that it has worked out. Okay, next. Do you think Graham Plattner was qualified or unqualified? 66% unqualified. Let's see, 34, interestingly, I don't know who, 40, you still have a fair number of younger people who think he was qualified. Interesting. Do you think supporting candidates with Nazi tattoos are evidence of anti-Semitism, or does that have nothing to do with anti-Semitism? Very clear response here, 74% seen as anti-Semitism. Next. Right. Do you personally feel that you live in a country where there's an opportunity if you work hard, or do you live in a country where the deck is stacked against you? Again, this is a pretty good result, 79-21, saying I work in a country where opportunity is there, and that included 71% of Democrats. And yet the drill here from the left is completely the opposite. Now, 21% can still be close to half Democrats. It could still win a lot of Democratic primaries. Next. Are you for or against it? Now, this is interesting because one of the big things that the left is for that is very popular is Medicare for all. 69-31 favor Medicare for all, including 85% of Democrats. Republicans are split, independents are with it. Next. Under a Medicare for all, is healthcare paid for by the government, or can you still get private healthcare? Well, again, I like to see what people think these programs are. 58-42 thought you could still get. Democrats said it's paid for by the government, okay, which is more or less true. Under Medicare for all, do private insurers still exist? Private insurers still exist, 57-43. Well, again, the element of Medicare for all is to get rid of the private insurers. Next. If the government pays for all health insurance, do you think medical care would improve, get worse, or stay the same? 38-42, slightly get worse. Democrats said it would get better. Republicans said it would get worse. Independents a little bit worse. And do you think Obamacare is working or not? Democrats say yes, Republicans say no. Interestingly, for a while, this had moved to more of a consensus it was working. Now it's a move back to, if you're a Democrat, yes, if you're a Republican, no, and split independents. Next. Do you think current Medicare system is working? 58-42, yes. Now, I looked at the crosstabs. People over 65 think that it is working, okay? That's the people who actually use the program actually feel strongly it's working. Do you think Medicaid is working? That's 55-45. I didn't go to look at lower income yet. Next. But Democrats say it is. Do you approve or disapprove of Medicare Advantage? Some people are trying to get rid of Medicare Advantage. That seems to be a really bad idea if you're planning on getting any votes. By 78-22, people like their Medicare Advantage. And you personally happy or unhappy with your own health coverage? Interestingly, 72-28. Again, there's a lot of discontent with the healthcare system, yet you have almost 3/4 happy with their current healthcare. Next. Now we'll shift it over to AI. I got to move faster here. Get you guys to do so. Do you personally use AI? Yes, I use it. Do you use it a lot? Yes. All right, so we know that. And let's see, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, more or less the same. Democrats a little bit more, they're younger. Next. Okay. Do you find using AI amazing or nothing special? Okay. I don't know. I think it's amazing. Independents seem to think it's amazing. Do you think we need to adopt as much AI as possible, or we need to slow down AI? Now, this is really interesting. 67% say we need to slow it down. That's a majority of Democrats, Republicans, Independents, users of AI, a little more split. Next, but not overwhelming. Next. Do you think AI has social dangers associated? Yes, 82. What do you think the primary danger is? Cost jobs, 41. Require too much power, 30. Again, pretty much across the board. Next. Which comes closer to review? Data centers are critical, or data centers are facilities that use too much energy and water to provide benefits to local communities, 62%. Pick the second, right? And if a company was building a data set in your neighborhood, you are definitely opposing that 2-1. And it's not particularly partisan, a little bit, but not that much. Next. So you just have to absorb that AI, the biggest technological advance, most likely in our lifetime, is about to potentially hit some incredible political headwinds here. Right. And is America going to take itself out of the AI race? Are politicians going to pick up on this? I'd give you, if I had time, and maybe in the questions, a very different analysis. But this is again, and the left is out there trumpeting this. They're going to pick up on Medicare for all and AI for no one. Right. Do you think the Supreme Court is supposed to mirror public opinion in its role, or defend the Constitution regardless of public opinion? So interestingly, 25 only, this did work out, 80-20. That was the design, and that sort of worked out and is understood. Next. Democrats a little less so. And then I ran through. You can look through the whole poll itself, but I ran through the different decisions. Right. The Supreme Court upheld existing law of birthright citizenship. Anyone who was born here, even those parents here illegally, is automatically U.S. citizens. Do you favor this decision? 66-34. Do you think the court followed the Constitution in this decision or on the law or not? So this is an interesting point. Put this way, the Supreme Court judges got a fair amount of credit. They got 58% from Republicans and 78% from Democrats. Next. Race cannot be taken into account when making congressional districts. Everybody favored that, 76-24, not everyone. 76% 24. Do they think it followed the Constitution? Yes. And so in all the recent decisions, actually a majority, the next, Supreme Court said each state, it's up to each state whether to accept mail ballots after Election Day. They favored this. Do you think the court followed the Constitution? Yes. So that was pretty good also. So you see that there's actually less angst about the court than is being, I think, ginned up. Next. This was the closest, like, interesting. The court ruled that drawing districts for political purposes is up to each state legislature, not the courts, allowing political gerrymandering. I think this was a bad ruling, so did 51%. But 57% thought that, you know what, they're going with what they believe is the Constitution, even if you disagree with the ruling, which is a good finding. Next. Are you proud to be an American? Again, we did a lot of this around America 250. 74% are proud to be American. And you can see that whopping party difference. And you can see that that pretty big age difference, right? Very proud is 24% among 18 to 24 and 58% among 35 to 64. And there's a huge partisan split, like a 36-point partisan split on very proud. Next. And as an American, what values are most important to you? Freedom, number one. Peace, equality, democracy, law and order. Capitalism and science were down at the bottom, right? And Democrats and Republicans agreed freedom was the primary value that they've got in America. Next. Work ethic. Interestingly, Republicans valued work ethic over democracy. Do you think, now, this is also important. Do you think you're in essence living the American dream, you'll likely achieve the American dream over your life, or will never live the American dream? Again, this is pretty good findings, right? Right, I'm living the American dream, 39. I will live it over my life, 36, and I'll never achieve it, 25. And mobility tends to be very age related. So that's why you've got 75% here buying into the American dream, and only 33% of Democrats saying they're not going to make it. And yet, despite that, when you ask them, should you be proud of America or America should not be proud of where it is, it's split right down the middle, 51-49, and it splits down partisan lanes so that they've confused partisanship with their own belief in America and the American system, which is quite interesting. Next. Hamas conflict, do you support Israel or Hamas? Again, about the same, 73 Israel, 27 Hamas. If you look at it, the 18 to 24 group is 60% Hamas. The rest of the groups are, by the time you get up to 65, you're at 88 to 12. Again, Israel, 63% of Democrats, 85% of Republicans. Again, people keep focusing on Israel, which is at 37, and not Hamas, which is at negative, 50. Next. Should Hezbollah be required to disarm or not? Yes, 70%. As you know, this was a subject of the MOU. Next. And again, I did do some questions. Which of these countries are you most favorable to? Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Iran, Israel, or Syria? Okay, and Israel's the only one with any substantial group. And which of these countries are you least favorable to? And of course, Iran was the mirror image of that. And you look among Republicans, among Democrats, Israel was 39 as most favored, among Republicans, 63, and independents, 44. Nobody else they liked. Again, this is so rarely put in context. Next. Think the Iranians are serious in the negotiations? No. Do you think that they've been following the terms. No. Next. Iran's attempting to control all of the shipping. Should Iran be allowed to control the waterway or not allowed? 68-32. Okay, and that includes 61% of Democrats. Should the U.S. resume use of force, sanctions, and blockades if Iran does not give up control of the strait? That is yes, 73%. That's the key question on the Iranian war at 62-38 among Democrats. Next. Did Iran's firing on commercial ships crossing the strait justify military response? Yes, 61. Do you think the U.S. has upper hand in negotiations or not? Yes, 64. Democrats split on that 50-50. Next. And I think more or less finally, who would you favor to be the next Democratic candidate? Harris is at 37, down 7. Gavin Newsom is at 24, down 2. As anyone knows, I wouldn't bet on early polling results in these things. Anything interesting finding? Newsom's doing pretty good with Hispanics. Next. And on the Republican side, J.D. Vance still at 42, down 3. Marco Rubio, 22. Don Trump Jr. At 18. Everybody else pretty negligible. By education, interesting. High school or less, 43-10. College graduate, whatever, 33-29. Interesting. Next. And then finally, this one other last question I point out, because this is the question, if the Republicans could figure it out, that they would want the midterms to turn on, which is, who do you trust to manage the economy, the Trump administration, the Republicans, or the Democrats in Congress? This rolls 15-85, 89-11, but 48 52. So it still comes out nationally at 52-48 because there's slightly more Republicans than Democrats. And that's probably the best thing they have if they could bring it to life in this situation. So Mark, that I believe is a pretty good overview of the poll. And we had some interesting, I hope you find some very interesting topics in that poll.
I did. Thank you, Mark. Again, the full poll's available now on tway.tv. I've got 100 questions, but I'm just going to ask 3 and then turn it over to the community. So please, if you've got a question about the poll, raise your hand. First, you have the generic ballot even. What would you say to someone who said, I just want a real clear politics, and it's whether it's the combination of likely voters, registered voters, but nonetheless, it's 5.2 advantage for the Democrats. How would you explain that to folks?
I mean, that's about that's a difference in polls. I mean, I think we are registered voters only. I think that it would be more adverse if you had a broader sample of unregistered voters. I think generally we've reweighted our sample past the last couple of elections, so that I think it's kind of 2 or 3 points more Republican than maybe some of the other polls, because I think that the elections have turned out to be 2 or 3 more points Republican than the polls have turned out to be. I would still say that we also went through a long history of the generic horse race being +5 for Democrats and the actual vote being about equal. And so most people for a long time had to interpret that question as the Democrats had to win by like more than 5 for it to be meaningful.
Surprised by the healthcare number, about 70% or so like their healthcare. That fights the conventional wisdom, and it fights my anecdotal life. I can't imagine talking to anybody between copays and deductibles. I'm surprised it's that high. Is that historically consistent? Does that accord with your sense of how people feel about healthcare?
Yeah, because people like their own doctor. I mean, the whole fight over, as you recall, Obamacare, and the whole like wedge against, well, did Obama tell the truth? It's, do you like the doctor? I don't think that you should interpret that as not meaning that healthcare could bubble up here as a serious issue. I do think if you look at the most important issues now, Healthcare is right under the economy.
So is the wording of the question not about your health insurance, but about your health care?
Yeah, it is about your health care.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. So I guess if you ask about health insurance, you'd probably get a less favorable number.
Yes, I think if you ask about your health insurance, which maybe we'll do next time to see what the difference is. But again, just remember that I it is a mass of contradictory opinions, which is I want my own doctor, I like my own health care, I'm unhappy with the cost, I'm unhappy with the system. You also have a lot of times where people are unhappy with a system, but then are happy with their own particular version of life.
Similar on education, where people say that the education system's horrible, but they like their teachers and they like their
Right.
school for their
And the
kids.
same thing with Congress.
Yeah, exactly. Lastly, on AI, I compare the AI industry to the Israel and American Jewish organizations. They have a smart group of people with a lot of money who have a big PR problem. These people are spending so much on everything. If they decided, hey, let's spend $1 billion on trying to change public opinion, could they? Is there a way to turn this, or is this baked in now?
Well, look, I was going to say I give you my analysis, which I'm gonna write up. And remember, I was chief strategy officer at Microsoft,
Yeah.
so I do have some experience. But I don't think people think about this rightly. Well, the way they think about it now is we've got 150 million employed, and what's going to happen is we're going to put AI in, and we're going to have 100 million employed, and then we're going to have 50 million unemployed, and it's going to be a disaster. That's more or less what people think. That's not the history of technology and technology change. That we have 150 million employed, and we're now going to add the equivalent of 50 million additional people in terms of the productivity that can be achieved by that 150 million people. And that extra 50 million people that let's call them bots, but they are productive, is going to add is frankly the only way we're ever going to pay the debt. It is actually the key to the advancement of society, as it always has been.
Right.
And so the fact is that no one has really put together a clear, positive picture about how the greatest advance in technology in our lifetimes is going to provide tremendous economic benefits by doubling worker productivity, and instead have taken this ridiculous view that then everybody's not going to have a job, which has never been the case as a result of technological advance.
Right. Okay. Again, you can see the full poll right now at 2a.tv. Time for your community questions. Raise your hand if you'd like to be in on the conversation. As always, unmute. Tell folks who don't know where you are and what's on your mind about the poll for Mark Penn. We'll start with Ray in Ohio. Ray, welcome and thank you, my friend.
Thank you very much, Mark. Mark Penn, I was wondering if you could give us paint a picture of the 18 to 24-year-old group and whether or not, based on what you found in your poll, they are the group that is most supportive of a socialist agenda.
I I think that public opinion among that group right now is truly frightening. Yeah, well, frightening. It's not frightening if you're Bernie Sanders. I mean, but it is radically different than the other age groups. It is pro-socialist. It is anti. It is pro-Hamas. It has very, very limited information about any of these things when you probe the information that they have in terms of what socialism is or what the various countries or history are in the Mid East. And so it is both definite. It also is, quite negative if you see that it's, only 25% approval of the president. So it's highly negative, it's highly motivated. You'll find the highest degree of anti-Americanism there. You will find the highest degree of support for China or Russia among that group, something like 40%. So I've never seen anything quite like it. A book that had a big impact on me in polling when I started out was called Rebellion in the University, because it has always been true that the 18 to 24 group has had quite different and more radical attitudes. And then as they got older, everybody, those attitudes tend to change, particularly when they get involved with family and children. But because 30 or 40% might not have children or family now, that process might never occur. But it is it is super. I mean, I think I've answered your question.
Yeah. Ray, thank you. Grateful to you. Really, really important topic on this poll and for the country right now. Robert, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are, drive safely, and what's on your mind for Mark Penn after you unmute.
So I had two questions for Mark. One, in the campaigns that we're running in the fall here in Pennsylvania, where I'm at, I mean, all you have to say is that you're against data centers and everybody's all for you, etc. How does that square with your analysis of AI generally? And then the second question I have for you, Mark, is there any understanding from your perch as to the why behind some of these opinions? In other words, what's driving the opinion? I mean, it's easy to measure opinion or the temperature, but the inputs are I guess the second order polling that is what I'm asking about.
Look, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, and I think as you look at this poll, you see this kind of emerging opinion now that the data centers and the spread of AI are something that we have to control and slow down, right? And so I think, first of all, a lot of the founders of AI were genuinely concerned about AI and said so. So they laid the predicate by saying, well, and personally, I'm afraid of AI when it comes to weapons, in particular nuclear ones. Having been a big fan of Battlestar Galactica, if anybody's seen that.
Skynet, yeah.
But I think that the economics, I don't think that the engineers, and engineers don't understand economics. I don't think that they've gotten the economics of it and the importance of it being an economic springboard, right? I think they've kind of gotten that down. So now I think the left has picked this up pretty strongly, but you look across the board, then Trump is running from Trump is probably the most pro AI person out there, right, politically. But then you see the Investors Party, a lot of working class concern. So that's where I don't think, and I'll go back to Mark Halperin's point. Now the AI industry is beginning to realize that maybe it shot itself in the foot by putting up all of these warning signs, and they never really painted a picture of of an enhanced future. And Elon Musk goes out there and he says, well, basically, don't worry, none of you are going to have to work anymore because the robot's going to do everything. And that doesn't really help at the end of the day. And I don't really think that's how. And what's happened in reality is that people thought that all these jobs would be lost, and that's just not what's happening. What's happening is what typically happens, which is there's huge demand for different types of labor and people, right? And then we're investing $1 trillion. We're investing $1 trillion in economic growth, and that also has tremendous benefits to the economy itself, right? Rather than the cash sitting there. And so I don't think anybody's painted a really good picture of how getting behind AI, the way, look, when the PC came out, people just saw that as a genuine revolution and small business loved it. We're really seeing now we're in a very different tech environment. And even though there are a couple of new they're really seen as mega companies behind AI. Can we trust them? Can we trust AI? Is this thing going to cost us our jobs? There's a lot of political discord here that could happen of this. And I don't think we've seen anything like this in a long time.
Yeah, well said. Robert, thank you. Clara, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are and what's on your mind for Mark Penn.
Thanks a lot.
I'm in Silver Spring, Maryland, by the way. I have a quick question. Do you see any trends when it comes to race? I'm interested in gender too, but I'm especially interested in any racial trends.
Mark.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're seeing big changes here in that sense. I think the black vote is staying principally Democratic. I think you saw, what is it? I think Trump had like a 23%, if I remember, approval, a kind of low approval among blacks. I don't see a lot of change really, by race. I think the biggest concern, the biggest change in the election was really in the Hispanic vote. All this talk about how all these black voters voted for Trump, I never found that in any poll or in reality. What I found was that the Hispanic voters changed.
Can I interrupt? I think the quote unquote big change was with African American men. The polling showed that 21 to 25% of African American men voted Republican in 2024. And I'm wondering if that trend continues because it had been increasing over several elections.
Yeah, I didn't find that happened in reality. I found that a lot of people said that happened. And when we looked at the actual voter statistics and I looked at the exit polls show 13%. They show a 1 point change in the black vote, but they show a 21 point
Even
change.
among men?
Yeah, I mean, even among members, you're talking minimal changes because,
Yeah.
you know, the big change was 21 points among Hispanics. That was a huge change. And the Latino population now is about the same size as the black population. And so the biggest trends that we have emerging here, and the biggest swing vote turns out to be the Hispanic vote, and the black vote change, I think, was oversold, that there actually at the end of the day wasn't that much change.
Yeah. Clara, thank you. John, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are what's on your mind for Mark Penn.
Oh, thank you, Mark. I'm actually driving through Florida right now on my way to work. Mr. Penn, I think this survey is just incredibly informative, and I think your analysis on AI is really spot on. But my question, though, to you is, I think the underlying issue that threatens freedom, affordability, the economy, and what's driving the desires of some to explore socialism is our debt, because we're transferring an enormous amount of money onto Americans, not through taxation, but through inflation. So we're at 39 trillion right now, and our debt liabilities are over 100 trillion. I thought our debt problem was solved when Bill Clinton balanced it 2 or 3 years in a row. And though I'm a Margaret Thatcher conservative, I would have voted for Clinton for a third term because of that result. So do people see that tying the issues between the debt and the effects of the debt? And what are your thoughts on that?
Thank you, John. Mark.
Well, again, I worked with Bill Clinton on the balanced budget. It was remarkable. It was remarkable that we were just 2 or 3 years away from eliminating the debt entirely. Bush kind of blew that one. And and so now we're sitting with this debt. And so what's going to be the answer, right? Right now, if interest rates don't come down, first of all, interest rates are an underappreciated factor in economic comfort or discomfort, right? What I analyzed recently was a dollar change in gasoline is about $1,000 per family. A 1 point change in interest rates is about $9,000 per family. It's an enormous difference in terms of the impact on the average family. And so the same thing with the debt. How are we going to get out of it? We're either going to inflate our way to minimize it, or we have to grow our way out of it to kind of make it relatively smaller or produce a surplus that would enable to pay it off when we're not even close to balancing the budget. That's where I come back to AI. AI is actually, rather than the enemy of progress, the only way that you could create enough economic productivity to actually repay the debt if we planned and managed it properly. I don't see Otherwise, we're just going to be stuck with this very high debt, no politicians of any will, emerging deadlines relating to Social Security, entitlement programs keep rising, faster than anything else, eating up more of the budget. So, and no politician is really confronting it, and nobody's putting up a bipartisan. So this is where's another Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich who are actually going to solve this? But if I ask balanced budget is 80% favorable. It's probably the number one most favored program, right, out in America. And yet I've got nobody that I know of who's out there trying to find another solution to the budget. Nobody.
John, thank you. Grateful to you. Sarah, welcome. Thank you for being here. Question from Mark
Thank you.
Penn.
Hey, Mark. Thanks for this. First of all, I could not agree more on the need for the AI community to start to talk about the benefits. I can hardly, it's very hard to, even if someone asks me, like, what are they for healthcare, to kind of rattle them off 1, 2, 3. So I really hope at a minimum, whether this is an optimistic an outcome as you think, or some of the more pessimistic, that they can kind of help there. I guess my question is, if you were advising Vice President Harris, would you be optimistic about the numbers that you see in the Democratic poll? Tell her to run, she's the most well-known, or would you say this is like a peak and it's only a downhill slide?
Well, look,
Or somewhere in the middle.
I would say, look, you start off with a broad receptivity, good positioning. When you start with 40, you could win or you could lose. More likely than not, you're the most well-known candidate, and the other candidates are candidates of potential. So you're comparing somebody who's had a billion-dollar campaign against a bunch of people who have not had a billion-dollar campaign. And what would their numbers look like if $1 billion were spent promoting them? So I'd say realistically, don't kid yourself. This number is most likely to be a very soft number that could deflate very quickly, particularly as other candidates, gain recognition. Having said that, it's like not that many people get an opportunity to be president. What do you want to do with the rest of your life? I don't know why I shouldn't run for governor of California. That would have been, I thought, she would have been tough to beat given all those advantages and the time and the Democratic. But she didn't opt for that, right? So that says to me that she still wants to be president, right? So either she wants to rest on a book, or she wants to be president, in which case she's going to try it again. And what I would say is, your numbers are inflated by the advantages that you had, and the others will be able to catch up if you can't run an effective campaign. And you didn't run an effective campaign when you ran the first time, and you didn't run an effective campaign as president, and you did not get very good ratings as vice president, and you did not have to run a primary campaign to get the nomination. So in that sense, you're fundamentally untested compared to the other candidates. So if I were in the poly markets, I'd probably bet against her. If I were
Certainly
her,
at 37, yeah.
if I were her, I would say the only reason not not to give it her. And then we have to go back to, with the exception of Nixon, giving people, well, it's kind of interesting because now we're into these second chances, right? So we used to be into you got one chance and nobody was ever going to give you a second chance, right? And Nixon got a second chance, and obviously Trump got a second chance, and Hillary got
As a general election candidate, I guess,
right.
right?
Yes, right.
Yeah,
Because you only have so many general election spots, right? And so are you going to give it to somebody who tried and failed before? Generally, the answer to that was never, right? And now actually the trend seems to be quite the opposite, right?
Well, it's never for the Democrats, but for the Republicans, it's pretty much what they did.
You think? Yeah.
Almost every Republican nominee ran and lost and then came back and won the nomination.
Yeah.
A second time.
Yeah. Second or third time in some cases. Sarah, thank you. Grateful to you. Last question, Dave, if you can be brief because of the clock, I'd appreciate it. Question for Mark.
Sure thing. Hi, Mark. thank you for the presentation. It was fantastic.
Thank you.
My question is, I guess, largely on the 18 to 24 demo again that we've been talking about. Two things I wanted to ask. There seems to be a lot higher support than I expected on the MOU, just across the board. I did find it interesting that it seemed like only less than 40% of people followed it closely. Did you find anything around there?
Well, it's interesting. Support for the MOU, we do ask a question. I didn't put it on because I wasn't quite, because it wasn't really relevant anymore, right? Because the MOU is dead. And Americans always support negotiation, interestingly, and they want peace, basically, right? And so I did go through, I didn't put that up because they would have been fine had the MOU worked out, right? And the strait been opened and and everything that Vance said about Iranians turning over a new leaf and they like in the middle of war. They're not against like giving people a chance for peace.
I'm sorry, Mark. I don't want to run on too long here. I guess my question was more, did you find it interesting how low the number of people were that said they were following closely? Right. I saw that most of these was around 38%.
No, because nobody's voting on. When people say this is an unpopular war, this is not an unpopular war. This is not something. Nobody's voting on it, more or less. Their principal concern is about gas prices. 40% following it is probably more than typically follow foreign policy. This people in America are focused very much on their own lives. What is this economy like? What is inflation like? The president has a wide berth in terms of the choices he makes in foreign policy to lead the American public.
Yeah, Dave, thank you. Our relationship, our partnership with HarrisX will continue. Mark will be back, and we'll have polls regularly during two-way tonight. Grateful to Mark and his colleagues for once again presenting the poll. Full polls available on two-way.tv right now, and I'll be back tomorrow 9 a.m. Eastern time, the morning meeting, and new episode of Next Up is available now. Mark, thank you. Great to see you as always, and much appreciated.
Thank you, Mark.
Have a good evening, everybody. I'll see you at 9 a.m.